Alam naman natin, pag Pilipinas ang pinag-uusapan, palaging may problema. Either there's a typhoon, there's something happening in the government, there are all these issues. Now, as an organization here in America, I'd like to understand what makes you decide to go out there into the streets and really make your voice heard. Because there have been so many past events that Bayan USA has been a part of. Let's talk about those events and what really rallied you guys to get out there. Nicole?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the earliest campaigns that I remember with Bayan USA revolve around the issue around making sure that we hold the Philippine government accountable to human rights violations. And there was a case of one of our friends, Melissa Rojas, who was actually doing some work in some of the community's health mission-related work, and unfortunately was a victim of, abduction and torture. And so for us, it was a reality check that, in understanding that activism in the Philippines is oftentimes really targeted as being criminalized, as if
because historically, when you are deemed as, ay, aktivista yan, it's not a very positive connotation.
Right, yeah, and that's what we oftentimes hear, but the reality is it's not a crime to want to see genuine change in your community and wanting to see a better future for your country. And so what we see and what many of us are inspired by is meeting activists ourselves who are on the front lines, whether they're in the fields as peasants or working in factories or simply doing health-related work. They want to see genuine change, and that's long-term, and that's related to being able to be an activist and making sure that your voice is heard. And us here in the U.S., it's important because we are Filipino, we're directly connected to the Philippines, and at the same time, like Eric was mentioning, we have that sense of responsibility, and we come from a rich legacy of actually community organizing and resistance. When you look back at our history facing Spanish colonization, Japanese colonization, as well as U.S. imperialism, these are the type of things that we've seen, and the movement has been growing exponentially, not just in the Philippines but internationally. And here in the U.S., we have a very important role to play in that, especially because there's so many of us here, particularly in the Southern California area.
Yeah, I think a lot of Filipino Americans, particularly second generation, it's always that struggle to define their identity. And I feel that when you're part of an organization such as Bayan USA, when you're amongst your people, that empowers you to really discover what that means. I'm getting goosebumps. I really but I think it's important that we know what's going on in our mother country. Terry, talk to me about the past events that you have been a part of that has really shaped your perception on life in general.
Yeah, one recent event that just happened, Nicole and I actually were able to go to Washington, D.C. recently, and we had a GABRIELA USA All Leaders training where we did organizing training, but not only that, but we also spent time with members of GABRIELA Washington, D.C. there, the majority of whom are traffic survivors. So these are actually teachers. They were professionals in the Philippines. They are teachers, and then they applied to work here in the U.S. Expecting to practice their profession as teachers. But what happened was they were taken advantage of by recruiters in the Philippines who made promises to them, and then when they got here, they didn't have the jobs that they were expecting. So these are about 300 teachers, majority of whom are women. So we were really able to spend time with them, learn about their struggle, but also be with them in front of the Philippine embassy at Washington, D.C. to call for justice for them. And we're also really questioning why isn't President Noynoy Aquino protecting our kababayan, who came here through the right path, right? They came here legally, but then they're taken advantage of. And so we're really calling on President Noynoy to respond and protect the needs of our kababayan, and also to implement policies where they can really find work at home, because that's part of what we see as the problem is that if our kababayan had actual livelihood back home, they wouldn't be forced to come here and then be separated from their families. So for me, that was a life-changing experience, and part of what makes me passionate to stay involved in Bayan and GABRIELA, because we're part of a movement that really genuinely fights for the welfare and rights of Filipinos here, but also back home.
Yeah, but what's sad is the biggest export of the Philippines isn't its coconut trees, but its people. And that's a powerful message. A lot of people are forced to leave their motherland in search for better opportunities. And for the most part, they are separated by their families. This happens time and time again. Eric, as a filmmaker, how are you trying to share your passion for our community through your work?
Yeah, as a filmmaker, I love making films, but I think the most important thing is the purpose for why you do it. And being part of the movement is really the driving force. And it's just another, film is just another form for raising awareness. And with Anakbayan USA, I think in the past 10 years, one of the best things that we've been able to do was to gather Filipino youth and student organizations from around the country to form a national network called Kapit-Bisig Kabataan Network in response to the recent typhoons that have been happening. As we've seen in the past 5 years, there's been typhoon after typhoon every year. And
it's not going to stop.
And it's not going to stop. And it's because of that reason that we formed this network, because we want to be forward thinking, and we want to also have a continuous way for Filipino youth to be part of raising relief and also participating in relief missions on the ground. So this past summer, we were able to send over 20 youth to the Visayas in Tacloban and parts of Leyte.
So they were actually there.
They were actually there.
At the grounds. That must be definitely life-changing. All right, when we return, we're going to be talking about their 10th year anniversary. 10 years. 10 years, that's a big deal. We'll be back here on Kababayan Today.